Good morning. It is a good morning, and we have just a little under 2 weeks for Christmas. We have 9 days until Christmas Eve and 10 until Christmas Day, both of which I celebrate privately. And today we're talking about something a little less Christmassy. I think, when you think of Christmas, you think of Santa Claus. Hopefully not, but some do. And you think of the Grinch being the villain. Today we're talking about villains and how villains are taking over the main stage. And so we'll be talking about villains, random but amazing, like topic, not doctrine, annihilationism, and a current event on the PCA. So we will discuss all of those things and a little bit more this morning on the Dear Church Podcast. You're listening to the Dear Church Podcast.
The first Noel, the angel did say, was to certain poor shepherds in fields as they lay, in fields where they lay keeping their sheep, on a cold winter's night that was so deep. Noel, 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 Lord is the King of Israel.
Welcome to the Dear Church Podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang. We have with us Pastor Eugene, Chuck, and Brian. And today we do have a lot of things to get through this wintry Monday morning. And so I think perhaps we'll get right to it, unless Brian has something extremely insightful to say because he has a mic with him today. So Chunsak had the mic. No, we have both mics. So Chunsak and Brian are mic'd. And so you guys can say anything that comes to mind. So if Brian or Chunsak says anything, you can hear them now, which is great. And so they don't have to put up this pure and clean image that they always try to put up. But this morning, speaking of villains like Brian, we are speaking of villains like Brian, there are movies that have come out and will come out soon. And so, of course, we're talking about, and you would probably know this, we're talking about a Netflix movie called Steps. Now, why are we talking about this? Steps in all caps, I think. This isn't necessarily because I love Cinderella. I think she's like a B or C tier princess. My daughter has gotten into Frozen and Moana lately, and so I think those are A and A plus S tier. But it is the newest edition of a trend that we've seen in the past where villains are becoming humanized. We've seen this in Maleficent, Wicked, and now Steps, where Cinderella's evil stepsisters are reframed as innocents that team up with Cinderella. So it's a retelling of an original story that explains away why they were quote unquote evil, or a retelling that shows, hey, they're not really that bad. And so I think when we have movies like this, it may be fun, right? For some, like a nostalgia thing. Oh yeah, maybe they weren't. But the issue is that it challenges black and white morality, good and evil morality, and via stories like this. And it's a cultural pivot towards empathy for the other. So I guess this idea of where is this coming from? Are we thinking too deep about something that's not meant to be deep? Where does this come from? Is simply a money grab from studios to make money off of originals?
I think we'll see. I put this in notes, right, for you. We'll see people like Ursula have their own backstory from Little Mermaid.
Probably, yeah.
Or Scar from Lion King have his backstory. So we can kind of empathize or sympathize from where they were coming from.
I mean, we've had Cruella talking about, with Emma Stone, I think. Cruella, great movie. We've had even Wicked, which is a musical. So we've had all these stories come out as like a side, plot twist. Hey, they're actually not that bad. It was all a misunderstanding. And so these characters are supposed to be quote unquote evil. Like Cruella de Vil is literally like that person is evil. But now we're having backstories to, hey, here's why. Here's why she was like this. She's actually not that bad.
Yeah, my wife and I saw Cruella. We thought it was pretty bad. I think the CGI was horrible.
I like the two henchmen,
Do you remember the dogs?
like all of them.
No, the Dalmatian dogs that would jump,
I don't remember.
kill. Okay,
I don't remember the
I don't
film.
want to ruin it for people who didn't watch it.
Oh, I do remember.
And it was CGI'd.
Oh,
the
I see.
dogs.
I see.
Yeah,
I thought it was
And
real.
looked so fake, but and that dress with the moths or whatever bug it was.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, the first Dalmatians 101, Cruella de Vil was depicted as very simple and like a pure evil.
Yes.
There's no redeeming quality about her. When she first comes into the picture, this was this very small, homey family, and she would come in and then, she would put out her cigarette in their cupcake. It was very, very caricatured, an evil caricature of someone. And so later on, I guess they had to do this. But yeah, I think we could look forward to Ursula having her backstory or Scar having his backstory to say why he was so bad, and in the end, now I understand why he had to kill Mufasa.
Yeah.
Because of his upbringing.
Because of his trauma.
Yeah,
So he had to
of his trauma.
traumatize Simba.
Yeah.
But I guess the question is, right, because I think there is theological questions here to be asked. Where is this coming from? Where is this desire for empathy towards villains coming from? Where we want to relate to the villain? And does it have any real life consequences? Because people might think you're thinking way too deep about something. It's not that deep.
Yeah, eventually, if, let's say, we talked about this for a little bit when the anti-hero becomes the hero, and that's someone we want to look up to. Batman was kind of like on the borderline.
Yeah.
Batman's still a hero, but they kind of made him into anti-hero. Nolan did. And it was kind of a really remarkable piece where, he would have to toe this line. Am I a hero or am I a villain or that kind of thing? And then that was if I may, the brilliance of the writing where Two-Face and Batman were kind of like, because Two-Face had the coin, but they were almost like
Harvey
they were
Dent.
struggling with, are we just two sides of the same coin?
Right.
That kind of thing. And so you had to watch it with that kind of thought in mind. But I don't think that was the beginning. That wasn't the beginning of where we started to see anti-heroes as the people to look up to. But even when we saw Frozen, you mentioned Frozen, Elsa. I have huge problems philosophically and theologically with Frozen. I don't think you should be showing it to your kids and things like that. Obviously, you do, but you don't have problems with Santa. I mean, you have problems with Santa Claus, but not Frozen. I'm kind of the opposite, where I have huge problems with Frozen, but not Santa Claus. Santa Claus is just something that you could look at, and eventually it'll go away. But Elsa, Frozen, that kind of philosophy can last forever in a kid, especially a girl. And so I think I have huge problems theologically, morally, and philosophically with Frozen. And I know this is, I might be in the minority because people love Frozen. Still, to this day, all the little girls dress up as Frozen. And so...
Wait, I don't think Frozen's like Frozen is just the state, I think, right? Like in which you are in. Wait, where do they even get that title actually? Because no one there. It just freezes. The kingdom just freezes. I know, but why is it called Frozen? Why not Elsa's?
So finally,
decision?
the whole pivotal moment of the show, and all 2 and 3 and all the subsequent sequels, the pivotal moment of the show is when she realizes that she's been holding back because she's been held back because she's been holding back. And once she lets go, once she lets it go, right? That's when she can be free. No more rules, no more people to tell her what's right or wrong. She's going to make her own way. And then that's when she really becomes herself. That's when she takes control of her powers. That's when she can really shine. That's when all the story shifts from, man, this is hard and this is dark. So many people are suffering, from now that because I found this on my own, I made this self-discovery and I can do this on my own. I can throw off all the shackles, all the rules that kept me, from becoming who I am. And now I could become the superhero I really should be, which is the whole point of Frozen. And some people are like, oh, it's about sisterly love. It's not about sisterly love. it's about Let It Go. That was the highlight of that show or that movie. And so I again, I have huge moral qualms with what it was trying to teach. And, for me, it was sort of a lament. I had this lament that people enjoyed that movie to the degree where people spent millions and millions, maybe a billion, I don't know, millions and millions of dollars on the movie and all the paraphernalia or dressing up the kid and whatnot. And so I think it stems from something much deeper. And if you love Frozen,
I have a Frozen. Adeline's having a Frozen birthday party tomorrow.
I've ruined it.
It's going to be very blue.
This is post Adeline, so I'm sure it's going to be fine. But if you love Frozen, one of the things that I think is it's not just Frozen. It's not just Frozen. It's the whole idea of in our culture of us now empathizing or sympathizing or being able to relate to villains, because villains are people too, that kind of thing. And before I get to the theological and philosophical aspects of this movement, I want to go to the historical shift of when this happened. And I think for the most part, what we saw was in America, in the West, the shift happened post-World War I and a lot post-World War II. And it also happened because people started to accept these Freudian concepts of what human beings are, like the id and things like that. So let me just go over some really basic stuff instead of going through some crazy stuff. And this is something that I think we could sympathize with greatly, because World War I and World War II were obviously they were huge wars, and it involved the world, and that means we saw catastrophe on the world stage. And because of media and TV pictures that we were able to have and store, we saw it again and again and again. And so let's say you were part of, I don't know, Genghis Khan's conquest of Asia and Europe, right? There were an incredible amount of atrocities committed. He would wipe out villages and maybe rape like 100% of the women there and things like that. And he would wipe them out. In fact, isn't there like some kind of statistic out there that a quarter of all Asians have Genghis Khan's like DNA? And that's how many kids he had. And so there's some kind of crazy statistic like that. But we don't see those pictures over and over again. But in World War I and World War II, we get to see them again and again. So there's something that we dubbed, whether you think it's rightfully dubbed or not, I'm just saying this is something that we have dubbed in our psychology today, but it's PTSD. And so PTSD are people that were not only shell-shocked from war, but they continually had this shell shock come up again and again and again throughout their post-war period. So this trauma would affect them in their daily lives. And something that happened, I think, in the culture is because these two things started to converge, meaning Freudian concepts with the post-World War trauma, is that we started to see such horrific atrocities. We needed to start to make sense of that. And to try to start making sense of it, we started to humanize things, right? Humanize things. So up until maybe recently, the only thing that wasn't humanized really was Hitler. But now we're seeing Hitler humanized and things like that. I mean, everybody's human. But I'm talking about like the morality of right and wrong, black and white. It became very gray for everybody. It's just gray now. And so this isn't wrong, this isn't right, it's just gray. Or some people need some moral clarity, so what is wrong? And now obviously what's always going to be wrong is the white man. Whatever the white man did is always wrong. So I mean, you could go to that kind of space too. But we saw it depicted in media and movies and things like that. So let me get to one thing to kind of prove it to you. And there are all these other stories too. So Bram Stoker wrote Dracula, which everybody knows, right? So Dracula, when was this written? Dracula, I think Dracula was written in like 19. Let me look this up.
1897.
1897.
Published.
Yeah, it's around the 1900s, right?
Yep.
And so Dracula was written back then. Bram Stoker's Dracula was evil. It was like clearly evil. And, you know, he was disgusting looking, you know, looked like a bat and things like that. It was truly evil. As time went on, though, it started to change. It started to change where it became less like even like the next movie after Bram Stoker, the movies that were depicting Dracula still looked like a bat. It was kind of disgusting. It's like a bat-human hybrid and things like that. But as time went on, he started to become seductive. So before he would oppress and really, I don't know, it would be an assault against women. What Dracula would do, he would assault women. But as time went on, he became this suave and sophisticated, you know,
like a British guy.
elitist, right?
Okay,
Elite
okay, sure,
in
yeah.
society. And, you know, he would be rich. He would be living forever. And, you know, he had these moral quandaries. What do I do with all this life? You know, things like that. And sometimes you'll see modern depictions like, oh, I don't want to drink people's blood, but I just have to survive. Things like that. He became charismatic. So people were able to not only relate to him, but they started to look up to him. So they got rid of all his bat-like features, and he became this charismatic and even erotic, and how women would see him, women would see this as tragic, and so they would fall for this kind of, you know, person because he's malevolent, but his story is tragic.
I gotta save him type.
Yeah, so you know, he became sexualized, he became charismatic, he became things to look up to, and people are like, oh, I would love to be Dracula, that kind of thing. And up to the point where the idea of vampires, which was the epitome of evil. So a vampire originally is someone who's so decrepit, so evil, would go down to the depths of evil that it would look disgusting, it would act disgusting as something that you should look in horror, to now like, oh, you know, let's humanize this guy. He's this good-looking dude. His story's tragic. Oh, you know, but he has all these superpowers.
Edward Cullen.
To now, exactly, that was my point. Now we got vampires who shine like diamonds in the sunlight or something like that, where, you know, he has immortality and he uses his immortality to seduce a high school girl, and that is something truly romantic.
What does he not like? Does he like not like strawberries or something like that? He likes strawberries or he doesn't like? No, that's how they connect. Him and the plain-looking girl.
I actually watched it for the first time recently.
Yo, stop lying. I know you've seen it before. I know you've seen it before. I know you saw it in theaters. Stop lying. Why are you gonna lie? It's okay. I saw it too.
I saw it in theaters. This other youth minister and I went for research purposes, and I think I was laughing so hard the girls there were shushing me.
Girls really,
But
really
they were
loved
so mad at me
Edward
because
Cullen.
it was so funny.
Yeah.
I think it was meant to be funny.
I don't think
It wasn't
so.
meant to be funny.
No,
They're like,
I don't
I'll
think
save
so.
you. That's a good one. So I used to laugh.
No, I don't
like the
think it was-
lines were, if you could make the corniest lines possible for the sake of it being corny, I want to write it down. That's what they did. That's what they did
I
to the
don't
movie.
think they meant to be. I don't think that's the intention. I think it's a
Oh,
swoon.
look at his skin
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
sun. It's like diamonds.
Yeah.
That was incredible. It's really funny. So if you want a good comedy movie, that's something I would recommend you watching. But see, this is the evolution. The evolution of, you know, let's say Dracula or Frankenstein, where Frankenstein now is a monster to be, you know, loved. And again, look at this tragic story. You know, I love Frankenstein. And you mentioned that, right? You mentioned it with the Water movie, where the woman falls in love with that creature from the water.
The alien thing.
Yeah. And so you mentioned it before in the previous podcast. And so this became like a thing that has now gone to our children. Our children are now watching movies like Frozen or Cruella or now Steps from Netflix or some other movie out there, because it has gone to, we need to humanize them, to now they're these tragic, these tragic people, to tragic heroes, to now just heroes, right? And so what are the theological implications of using Freudian psychology that fuels this kind of thinking? And when we, if I may complexify, villains, right? Because, aren't all villains complex, and aren't they all kind of tragic to a degree? Well, we're seeing it now. If we get, let's say, I don't know, when we get Freudian popular culture with the id running wild, and we start to see that like people are loving it, people are like really resonating it with it. So then we see, let's say, a murderer out on the street. It used to be like, well, it still didn't affect our broad popular culture until very, well, like to this degree until recently, and where we see like there's a guy who stabs another girl right in the neck. Irina Zarutska,
in
right?
the Carolinas. Yeah.
Stabbed her right in the neck. And what we saw from this man was that he was a convicted felon, multiple felonies this guy committed, but the judge continued to let him go because he's a tragic story. So he goes around killing. He goes around committing all these, felonies, and they continue to let him go, and he continues to commit these felonies because he's a tragic story, right? And so these are people that we have now put up on a pedestal almost to say we must protect these people because society is the one that made them this way. Society is the one that forced them into this position where they have to murder for no reason. After this guy killed Irina Zarutska, he would say, "I got that white girl." That's what you could hear him saying over the video. But nothing. What's going to happen to this man? And so I would hope that this man would get justice and they would keep a man like this out of the streets.
I was actually going to ask you about that because I think not that these movies are influencing policies, but it's more of the shift in culture where now, movies where villains are highlighted or seen as the main characters on the main stage. And you have that. And then you also have policies that are soft on crime. And even right now, people are protesting against ICE. And that's become a huge thing where people think that the ICE are the villains and everyone else who is illegal, who is a criminal, they have stories too. They have backgrounds too. So we need to listen to their stories. And so we need to disrupt ICE and the government and what they're doing. And so that's been a huge thing right now as well.
Who's that guy that they lauded as a hero?
Yes.
Kilmar Obriga Garcia or something like that, right?
The guy from... yes.
And then this guy committed multiple felonies.
Yes.
He would traffic humans. They caught the man trafficking humans. And he was part of MS-13.
Yep.
And yet, at the same time, they lauded him as their poster boy, the Democrats.
Yeah.
They lauded him as this poster boy, like, what a tragic man.
Yep.
Because of these immigration policies, look, him and his family are suffering. And when it came out that his wife, would file for, what do they call that? A restraining order. That stuff kind of gets swept under the rug, and then the wife come out later and is like, "Oh, it's terrible what they did to my husband," and things like that. And so, what's that other show that Amazon has? Rings of Power.
The Lord of the Rings one.
Yeah, I'll never watch it. I told my friends I will never watch it. They're like, "Oh, you should watch it. It's really good." I was like, "I'll never watch it." But I saw some clips where it's now the orcs that really didn't want to go with Saruman. And they wanted to stay with their family. They were family men, and so before they were sent off to war, they would kind of hug their family and their kid. And it's like, "Oh, my Lord, do we have to do this?" It's kind of crazy, right?
I mean, they made orcs cute in not World of Warcraft, but in Warcraft, in that whole universe, orcs are pretty cute. They're like little like gremlin type things.
Well, I'm talking about the lore of the Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
right? Of what Tolkien really originally wrote, right? So instead of them being mindless drones for evil that were just created for the purposes of carrying evil, now they need a backstory. And the backstory is, some of them didn't want to go to war. Some of them wanted to, stay home with their families, but they were
Play
forced
catch.
to go to war.
Yeah.
And so here we are now with this source of evil, the initial understanding of evil, the very clear presence of evil is now going to be muddied. So this is what's going on. My point is, it's going to be muddied because now what we have is we have childhood trauma, we have mental illness, we have oppression and repression, we have societal factors that are hitting us from so many dimensions. How can you really blame, this murderer for doing what he did?
So I guess my question, and this is kind of where I would like to go with, bringing up, ICE and the police and law enforcement and stuff like that is, if villains are just simply misunderstood, like these movies will say, and like the social commentary will say, what does that then say about the actual heroes like Cinderella, the actual heroes like law enforcement who are working to keep our country safe? Do they become the real oppressors? Because it seems like that's the narrative now.
Yeah, I think you've caught on to something where if you like Cinderella's stepsisters, eventually you won't like Cinderella.
Yep.
That's just the way it is. If you like something, then you won't like the hero anymore. It's the hero that is now keeping the villain from really shining, because the hero is continually letting the oppression or repression of this villain survive. Villain, right? They don't think they're really a villain. So, let's go back to the Cruella example. Cruella is psychotic. She is this puppy skinning psychotic who wants to wear Dalmatians for fur, right? But we changed it now to, but if you look at her if you look at her psyche, she was this abused orphan. And she had this, she really couldn't associate with people. She had like AD, attachment disorder or whatever it is. And so because of that, she's not really a psycho. She's not evil for wanting to skin all these puppies. It's something that she had to go through, or that's what she is. So now from Freud, what we get is we went from burn the witch. Now that's a crazy statement to make in today's society. I'm just letting you know this is how it's affected all of us, left, right, center. We went from burn the witch to understand the witch.
She has favorite food too.
Right. And so it is such a fast change. This is under 50 years. It's such a fast change from where we saw there was a clear separation from good and evil to now I'm not sure if anything is evil, which makes it easy to say I'm not sure if anything's good. That's the point. If you are not sure what evil is, you're not sure what good is. What is good? And that's why, all this Marxist ideology and all these things that you're seeing popping up, they can say, oh, these things are evil. Then you could ask them, then what's good? What's good, right? What's true utopia? And they'll say something of a communistic value, something like completely nonsensical, unrealistic. But it's like, why is that nonsensical? Why is that unrealistic? We could do it. We could do it. We could truly achieve a communistic society where everyone will share everything. It's like, okay, because the only evil are people that don't agree with you. That's the only evil. And so this kind of, I guess it's a contradiction in the self is what leads society to eat itself up. So we don't know what's good, what's evil. That's why we'll be pro-LGBTQ and pro-Muslim, even though they're opposing each other. Like LGBTQ values and Islam do not have the same values. In fact, if Islam takes over, they'll kill the LGBTQ people, and they do in their countries. But for us here, we can't make that connection. Because what we see evil are the people holding us back from letting it go. We need to let it go. Society is holding me back from letting it go. I want to sing the song, let it go, like, I want to sing that song. I want to free myself so I can make myself a frost dress and make myself an ice castle. And so those are the things that we see now in society where people are like, whatever holds me back, that's evil. And so it's not like a moral evil thing. It's now we only see society with this Rousseauian, it must be these outside factors that are affecting me from really becoming my true self.
But I think, so the danger, like you said, is not that these evil people are good, right? Because that would be too clear. That would be too easy to spot. But the danger is that these evil people have a point, right? That they have a story, that they have a personality, that they have issues too. They have favorite days, good days, bad days, and whatnot. And I think that's where the confusion is. And so, do you think though that something like this, and we see this in the culture with, like we were talking about, where it's policies that are soft on crime and whatnot. How do we reverse this, right? Because now if you say, hey, that's evil, that's good, people think, well, you're just backwards. How come you didn't consider their how come you didn't consider their story? So right now, if I were to say, hey, illegal immigration is bad, it's evil, and protecting our country is good, they'll be like, oh, see, you're pro ICE. You love ICE, don't you? Why don't you become an ICE member and I'll punch you in the face or whatever it is? How do we fix this? Because it seems like almost going to the right position where something is right or wrong is seen as extreme now, even.
Well, I mean, that goes beyond what I was talking about with, the elevation of villains. But I'll connect this. I didn't see the movie, but in 2019, there was a movie called Joker, right?
Oh, I saw a little bit of it.
Yeah, Joaquin Phoenix was
Isn't
my favorite gladiator character.
He's
so evil.
He's Emperor, the pale-faced guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a scene, this is a side note, but there's a scene in Gladiator where he's talking with his sister, whom he loves, right, which is incest. But he's talking with his sister, and he has his spy. So he's talking about these little bees buzzing everywhere. And then he screams in her face, "Am I not merciful?"
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite parts of the movie because it was so tense, it was so evil, it was so messed up, like in so many things, and he was able to depict it. So I appreciated his depiction. That wasn't in the script. And that's why her face is genuine. Her face is genuine because she's literally shocked that this is going on. Because he was supposed to say, "Am I not merciful?"
Yeah.
Right? In like this really psychotic, evil, but sociopathic way.
Yeah.
But he does it in a psychotic way where he screams at her, "Am I not merciful?" in her face, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, Joaquin Phoenix plays this character Joker. I didn't see it, but I know the premise of the movie. But so many people came up to me from our church saying they really enjoyed the movie because my point is all of us, we are in this milieu. So why was Joker so brilliant? It's because Joker's not really evil. He had one bad day and the mental health system failed him. Like the systems that were supposed to help his mental health or capacities or supposed to treat his illnesses, they failed him and he has this one bad day. That's why he's the Joker. And so it distills people to have sympathy for the villains or and I'll say the word deviant. So we now have sympathy for the deviant in society. And so the point that I'm trying to make on your point is when we love villains, it's not just the overall thing. We take the most deviant in society and we start to elevate them. So we love Cruella. We love Joker. We love Maleficent. We love Elphaba. Is that her name?
Elphaba.
Elphaba, right? The Green Witch, right? We love these guys, but these guys are truly evil in the original story. But now we love them because they were misunderstood. The system failed them. They had a bad day. Who doesn't have a bad day? We should sympathize. But what I'm telling you is what that does then, and that's why Kilmar Obrega Garcia, I think that's his name.
It is his name,
right? He is elevated, and people are like, well, why do we elevate him? I'll tell you why. Because he is the deviant of society. But look at all these societal factors. Poor guy, And so we've now raised it. So what that does is now evil isn't something morally cleared. It's just a social construct. That's why the the mayor-elect of New York, Zoran Mamdani, he's recorded saying in some previous meetings that violence is a social construct. Because if all these things are social constructs, I'll even get to the place where violence is a social construct. So when violence is done, well, it's just a social construct. When violence is done to me, it's because of your oppression. But if I do it to you, it's a social construct. And they could just play with words because nothing is clear anymore. Nothing is this is bad, this is good. It depends. It depends on, is he the most deviant of society? We should elevate. But if someone is lauded, someone is looked upon as great in society, that person should be brought low. We should step on that person because obviously the only way this guy got to the top is if he oppressed others. There's no other way. So moral authority, moral clarity, all these things are now jumbled up. They're in this goop, right? When you can't really figure out what's what and you're trying to scrounge up things. And that's really not just simply Freudian. That's the Nietzschean way of now we need to start making our own moral standards. And that's what we're seeing here. That's why we are seeing chaos, because man cannot make up their own moral standards. It's impossible because authority doesn't come from man. You don't take power, you're given power. And that's what we need to understand. I don't think people understand that. People always think that I need to take power, right? And so you'll see these politicians, what they want is power and fame, but they think that they could take it. They can convince you. They can lie. They can cheat. And they don't find anything wrong with that because they think that's the game. But the point is, that's not what Christians believe. Christians believe that authority is given.
Thank you for that. I think that's interesting to know. And as we watch movies and think about just even the things that are happening around us, like, we mentioned some policies and some current events that are happening in regards to this topic, I think it's good for us to understand what's going on and to kind of see through, the smoke of what's going on, even in movies like Steps. I will probably see it, though, for research purposes, just to see what's up.
Yeah, these villain movies really don't do it for me, so... that's why I haven't watched like Joker. People are, you're not going to watch Joker? It's amazing. I remember 2019, people used to come up. I'm not going to name names of people here in this church. I'm like, it's such a good movie. You should watch it. And it's like,
I heard it's scary, kind of. That's
really
why I didn't watch it.
Doesn't do it for me.
There's a group of people at our church, whenever these movies come out, they turn into these film critics.
I heard, so I watched Batman with Edward Cullen.
I don't.
Yeah. Robert.
He's
Robert
like a terrible
Pattinson.
Batman. People are gonna hate me for this. He's not good at Batman.
But people really liked it, right? So
He's
I
not
watched
buff.
it to see, where if they could keep this kind of, tension that, let's say, Nolan had with his Batman, and obviously I don't think so. I mean, people are like, oh, artistically it's good. It's like, oh, great. I mean, that's great. I hope you think so, and I mean, you got your bachelor's. I'm sure you have things to say. That's fine. I'm only kidding. I'm being a little facetious, but obviously, I'm telling you here because I wanted to get to not just simply the artistic level, but the historical context, the philosophical, meaning the Freudian and the post World War I and II contexts. As well as the theological concept. In the Bible, enemies are enemies, it's clear. And now we are in a place like, we don't have any enemies. Our enemy is, we'll say something like, oh, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but we war against the powers of darkness. Excellent, great. Guess what? Some people hold on and wield the powers of darkness. Who are they to you? Oh, they're misunderstood, they need the gospel and things like that. I was like, great, they do. They do. But when they're coming at you with a knife, what do? We have to really send them our social workers. It's like, okay, is there a way to stop them? It's like, we should have sent them social workers. It's like, no. We are in a situation where guys coming at you with a knife. They are wielding the powers of darkness. What do? And they won't be able to answer that because you can't say you need to physically stop them because then you'd be oppressing the oppressed even further. And so we've come to a place where we're paralyzed into not knowing what's good and evil anymore. When you see the face of evil, you should be like, that's evil. When you see certain things, and I get it, you don't want to maybe call someone evil, but yeah, if they're doing evil, they're evil. That's the thing that we used to do, and now we can't do that. And I'm telling you, it's because the Freudian mindset, psychology has gotten to you, whether you know it or not. It's been just hammered down onto you with all this media, all this art. And, now it's all about nuance, and they nuance you to nothingness, meaning they'll keep on nuancing you to now you don't even know what's good and bad anymore. And so, that's why like Maleficent is just this, she was scorned. Obviously she should be mad, but she's not that evil. Look at her restraining herself, that kind of thing. The evil witch of Cinderella, right? Wasn't that?
Endor.
I don't think Endor. Or orcs. Orcs are these, they're just family men. They wanted to be with their little orc babies.
They're cute in Warcraft.
Yeah.
Wasn't Maleficent Sleeping Beauty?
I thought it was Snow White.
Sleeping Beauty. That's it. Sleeping Beauty's right. Good call, producer.
She's like the hunter, right? Or something? No, she's the... I don't even know.
At least Chunseok with
I
the
have
mic
no idea,
is
to be honest with
helping.
you.
I don't know what Brian's doing with the mic.
Say hello, Brian.
He writes novels. In
He
between.
writes, he's right. He's saving all his stuff for his blog. So you won't get nothing's for free from Brian. You got to read his blog. Once again, his blog is
17
BLI at Substack. Please subscribe and pay the $5 a month. So buy him a cup of coffee. It is 17 BLI, yeah.
So moving on to the next topic at hand today. I don't know where this came from. Did someone ask you this?
What?
Annihilationism.
Yeah, it's everywhere right now. With Kirk Cameron saying that he's leaning toward annihilationism.
So, I mean, I know annihilationism from Jehovah's Witnesses. But,
Okay.
wait, they believe in it.
Okay.
Wait, they do?
No one's doubting that they do.
Wait, what? They do?
But it's so random.
No, but they do.
Okay.
So annihilationism, as Jehovah's Witnesses also believe, or conditional immortality, is something that is coming up in the bigger evangelical circles. And so perhaps something that we should address. And the question is this biblical? Is this just outright heresy, rank heresy? Or is this kind of like an in-between, an in-betweener, if you will? But annihilationism posits that the unsaved aren't actually tortured in hell, but they are resurrected for judgment. And if they are considered unworthy, if they are unrighteous, they just cease to exist. They just die. They're gone. As a matter of fact, immortality then, on the other hand, is a gift for believers only. And so if you're immortal, like if you're resurrected and you are considered righteous before the eyes of God through Christ, then you become immortal in heaven. If you are not, then you just stop existing. There is no hell. There's no eternal punishment. You just don't exist. And so this is a minority evangelical view. But
there are some very well-known evangelicals that held to annihilationism.
like John Stott,
Yeah. John Stott is a huge figure.
that's a big name.
But, I mean, he kind of went a little eagle at the end of his life. But,
Yeah. And so I think, we have to first distinguish this from universalism, which means that everyone is saved, right? So no one goes to hell because everyone is saved. So happy ending for everybody. But it's wrong because it starts to talk about the fact that there is no hell. God didn't create hell. There is no hell because if God sent people to hell, that's so mean. That's so unjust, perhaps even. And so how do we think through this? Where in the Bible do we see that there is a hell? How are we supposed to understand it? And if this is an error, annihilationism, if this is an error, is it as bad as saying that Christ is not divine? Like, is it a heresy or is it just kind of like a gray area in between?
I think it is a major error to believe in annihilationism. And I think it detracts from the Word of God. So it is a major error. Would I go as far as it's heresy? I would not. But I do think it's a major error that would probably prevent you from teaching and things like that. If you're a preacher and you believe in annihilationism, you probably should stop teaching. And so for me, it's a major error. only because the Bible is pretty clear. And I think the danger of annihilationism is that it takes away from the justice of God. And so when we talk about eternal torment and eternal punishment, it always has to do with the gravity of the offense, right? The gravity of the offense has everything to do with the gravity of or the weight of the offended. Does that make sense? So if I drop a piece of paper, no one's going to say, boo, I could just pick it up. But I dropped something, right? But it's a piece of paper. But if I dropped a Fabergé egg, it's a different weight than a piece of paper. If I took a piece of paper from you, people might say boo, but I don't think people would.
What was the paper, though?
I don't know. It's just a blank piece of paper.
Oh.
But if I took, the Fabergé egg, let's go back. If I took the Fabergé egg that you owned from you,
I own that.
That would be a major offense.
That's a crime. Right? That's an art crime.
And so, you could say some things you could say whatever you want, but our sins are an affront to a perfect and absolutely holy God who will not tolerate even the smallest speck of sin because he is that holy. That's the offense that we have committed against God. Now, that means we deserve punishment equal to that offense, yes? And God has stated what that punishment is. To start saying, eventually you'll be... Did you define annihilationism?
I just said that there's no such thing as hell. That after you die, if you are unrighteous, then you cease to exist after the final resurrection.
Well, yeah. You could be tortured for a little bit, but you just need to pay that torturous price, and then poof, you're gone, that kind of thing. You'll just cease to exist, right? And so some people think it's earlier, some people think it's later, but either way, you are part of this annihilationist camp, okay? And they'll use certain texts to verify, what they believe or something like that. And you read those texts, yeah?
I didn't.
Oh. And so instead of thinking it's eternal punishment is just a punishment for a time, and then it's annihilation. And so it's like you'll do the time, and then God will just erase you because, he still can't take sin, right? That kind of thing. I think there's huge issues with that. And even though some, church fathers had hinted toward annihilationism, and people throughout history that are notable have subscribed to annihilationism, it is not the orthodox view. We do not believe that eternal punishment means that you can get punishment for a certain time before you are annihilated. And I think it's because a lot of people believe that, yes, a just God, but a merciful God would not be able to put anybody in eternal torment.
But couldn't someone argue, well, ceasing to exist in itself is a punishment?
So I have my own takes on this, and, I just want to tell you the orthodox view, okay? And then I have my own thoughts on this, like my own philosophical thoughts, but I do not think weeping and gnashing, like it says in Matthew 13, is just for a time. There's two things, and R.C. Sproul really did it well when he was talking about hell. I watched the sermon again recently, but weeping is someone who's like crying and dreadfully sorrowful that he or she is in this place of torment. That's weeping. Gnashing, especially the gnashing of teeth, was to convey anger and bitterness. Like, how dare you? Who do you think you are to put me here? Those are the two things. And so the eternal torment that Jesus talks about, and again, Jesus talks about hell the most in the Bible, but the eternal torment that Jesus is talking about conveys these two. And this is what R.C. Sproul said while he was doing this sermon on hell. He said, if I were, because God can, if God would send me to hell, he wouldn't be any less just than he is, which is an incredible position to take. But he said, if I were in hell, I will be the one weeping, not gnashing. because he is so sorrowful that he is now displaced from the love and the grace of God. Now, you could say I have some moral quandaries with that or theological issues with that. Yes, if you believe in Jesus, you believe in Jesus. And I don't think he would deny that side either. But he was just trying to prove a point where he says, how I understand God through what the Word has shown is that I deserve every bit of punishment that God gives me. Annihilation then is now saying that God will give you this limited punishment because what you've committed is a limited sin. And that's where I have issues with that biblically. You didn't commit a limited sin. You committed a sin with eternal consequences. That means you committed eternal sin. That means it's of eternal weight. When you commit sin against God, it's not a limited thing. You did an eternal thing. Eternal consequences from sin. And so the punishment is eternal. That's why it's so heavy. That's why it's so, damning, if I may, that you committed the sin. And so you will be resurrected on the last day to eternal punishment if you do not have Jesus Christ, because the sin that you committed, you can think it's small. I don't care if you think it's small. But the sin that you committed is an affront against an absolutely infinitely holy God. That means however minuscule you think your sin is an infinite affront because he's infinitely that holy. And so there's that. I think the other thing are probably things that I thought about is the consequence of believing in annihilationism. But I'll stop there for anything you might want to respond to.
No, I think this is good. I think we keep it rolling. I think we keep it going.
Let me move, because if you believe in annihilationism, you're no different from atheists, because atheists believe after death, poof. Does that make sense?
Like you just don't exist anymore.
You're going to go on. So you're just like an atheist. How can you believe that? And so you can live like an atheist then. Why would you believe in God? Because there's no consequence for you not believing in God. You think you're merciful by saying that you are an annihilationist, but you are not being merciful. You are actually detracting from God's justice. What would make anybody want to believe in God? Oh, because, I want this good eternal life. Well, if you don't love God, you don't believe in that. But then on the flip side, if you don't believe in God, there is no fear also. So I think it's connected to this whole villain thing that we talked about in our first segment, where there's no more fear of God. We don't want to say these things are sin, these are bad, and these things should be, condemned outright, thoroughly by the church because the Bible condemns it. But now it's like, these guys don't believe, they're not part of the elect. They'll just be annihilated later. So not only does that affect your living, it affects your evangelism, doesn't it? It affects how you evangelize to people, because if they don't believe, it's okay because they'll just be annihilated.
Like it won't be hurt. It won't be painful.
It won't, it'll just be like, what do you call it? Lethal injection, but spiritually,
It'll just be gone.
Yeah. So, what's the point of all of this? What's the point of anything? Because in the end, you think that this is God offering a final mercy, but in fact, it's detracting from his justice, is my point.
How do people even get to this point, though? I get it that you might think, hell is going to be really, really bad, and so I don't want to go there. But at the same time, we know that not everyone is going to heaven, so we're not universalists. But how do we even get there? How do people even get to this point of there's no hell when hell, Gehenna, Sheol, the lake of fire is mentioned in the Bible?
Yeah, so in the end, I think a lot of people want to be more merciful than God, and they think that they are, but I don't think that they are. I think when you think that you're more merciful than God, what you're doing is you're detracting from his justice, and what you're offering now isn't mercy. It's compulsory, meaning you have to give this to people, and that's not mercy at all. If it's compulsory, that's not mercy. And so those are things that we start seeing. And the second thing is what I said before. And I wrote in, the page that I gave you, it does weaken sin's gravity. It weakens sin's effects, or you're weakening it. So you're saying, oh, sin, God will absorb that because he's just an infinite God, and, he'll just annihilate us in the end. That's actually not what's going to happen. There will be absolute justice done. So either the absolute justice was done to Christ on the cross, and now you bear his blood and forgiveness from that, or you do not have that, and you will take that full wrath of God, the full, cup of wrath, dregs and all, right? You're going to have to drink that. And that is eternal punishment that we're talking about. So that's my concern with modern evangelicals who believe that, a loving God, I can't imagine a loving God giving eternal punishment and torment to people. First of all, I don't think you know what eternal is. It's longer than you think and it's shorter than you think. And, that's something that we can't grasp our minds around yet. But we do know time. We do know time because we're in the water. It's like a fish out of water. We don't know what it's like to live out of water, but we do know what it's like to live in the water because you're fish. So same thing. We know what it's like to live in time. We don't know what it's like to live outside of time. And so here's my philosophical take. Now, all these other takes were more important than this take. I just want to preface that, okay? My philosophical take is that whatever you do has eternal consequences, not just between you and God, but for everyone else. Just because you're annihilated doesn't mean that you're erased. That doesn't make any sense to me. So annihilationists, for me, haven't gone even to the philosophical level. So it's the whole conundrum that even the writers of Avengers got. Does that make sense? So the writers of Avengers understood this. And remember how he erased half the universe?
Yes.
And then he realized in Endgame, now I realize that what I need to do is I just need to erase all of you and make people out of scratch where they won't know what they had, what they lost, right? Annihilationism, if I erase Junseok right now, and this is the writers were struggling or, trying to think through, if I erase Junseok right now, he's annihilated, gone. Is he really though?
I would have the strongest bench at our church.
No, but you would think even though you have the strongest bench at, I don't know, 255 or whatever it is.
It used to be Junseok. That's what I would think.
But that's the thing. You would know in your mind it used to be Junseok.
Yeah.
That can never be erased.
At 260.
That's my point. My point is that can never be erased at 465 or whatever he benches, right? And so that can never be erased. So in your mind, Junseok is still part of reality. How does annihilationism fix that? It doesn't. It doesn't fix that. And so annihilating him actually doesn't erase him anywhere from anybody else except who? So who does it erase it for? Just Junseok? So your case to me is that Junseok is having this particular mercy because he's going to be annihilated. And for me, that's such a short... It's not thought through because even secular writers thought it through. Erasing somebody actually doesn't do anything because you need to see all of what they did and their consequences carry through. That's what eternal punishment is. Everything that you did will be carried through to the end. That means everything, that's the crazy, amazing grace of Jesus Christ. Everything that you did, everything that you're doing, everything that you're going to do, all the sins that you would have done, all of that is compiled. The eternal consequences of all those sins are now put on Jesus Christ, and he was punished for all of it. And we get to live in the consequences of Jesus's perfect life. And we get to then eventually be perfect because of sanctification. So all these things that Paul is talking about in the letters are just amazing things that we could ponder on literally for eternity because the consequences are for eternity. Because in our finite minds, we can't really grasp eternity, but we can make symbols for it. Just like we could say, we could say the limit is 3 or something like that, right? Like we talked about before. We could say the limit is 3, but in eternity, it's 3. And then we get to see that happening. But in our mind, will our mind be able to grasp it? It's like, I don't know. I don't think we will, but we get to live it out. We get to see it through. Annihilationism takes that away. You don't get to see through your consequences, whereas God will give you the consequences for eternity. Everything that you did, you will get to see that through. That means you will be punished for all eternity because the consequence for your sin is eternal punishment.
Thank you. I think that's helpful. I didn't know that this was such a big uprising that's happening right now.
It's the talk of the town right now. Junzung and Brian obviously knew about it.
I knew it because of the Jehovah's Witnesses. I knew it because they believe in it. So, okay, that's interesting. I think something for us to definitely watch out for, and maybe even rhetoric that kind of go along this type of theology is something that we should be looking out for as well.
Yeah, so in the end, annihilationism is not a final mercy that is given to people. It's not mercy if it's our own version of what we think is merciful. That detracts from what is clear in the Word of God. And I would warn against trying to think that you are more merciful than God and attributing that kind of mercy to Him.
Thank you for that. I do like the theological discussion, so that was helpful. Moving on to our last chapter or segment of the day. This is more of a current event, recent event that has happened, I think last week, I believe. There was a PCA prayer and lament petition that started this past week. This is actually part of an ongoing initiative that was launched around 2024 with a prayer season going through Easter of 2026, so Easter of next year. And this prayer petition for prayer and lament was written by PCA minority pastors, ethnically minority pastors, lamenting denominational divisions. And there were 4, I think, laments that they had in their petition. And the first is suspicion. Second is marginalization. Third is rigidity. And fourth is mission burdens. And I'm sure you're going to go into detail on those things. But all of this with a vision for a healthier PCA. It calls for fasting and prayer, for reconciliation, to empower diverse leaders, and confessional generosity, all framed in love for the PCA. And there were some original signers like Pastor Erwin Ince that we spoke of actually a couple times prior on this podcast. And people have been joining. I think you sign like a petition form, you write your name, and then you are on the list to continue to support in prayer and fasting. And so I guess the question is, this has drawn a lot of activity in the last couple days, some criticism, some praise. And so I kind of wanted to know what your thoughts were in regards to this. This is a big, large Reformed denomination, a very, very popular one. And so, doing this is very big, right? Coming out with this is very big. So what are your thoughts on what's going on here?
I think this is a big problem within the PCA. Not the problems that they are suggesting that the PCA has, but them doing what they're doing. It's unfortunate because a lot of our friends are also a part of this, but I'm not sure if they fully are aware or they understand, or I don't want to, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think one of the things that people have faced in life is they have faced racism in, let's say, their ministerial lives, and they faced it to whatever degree in the PCA as well. And so when they see it, they don't want that to happen in the PCA. So you might say that the heart is good, right? But I've read this petition, and multiple times actually. I've read this petition or this call to prayer and lament. And, when you sign it, you're going to, I guess, promise to pray
Pray alongside.
or until Easter, right?
Yeah, of next year. Yep.
I don't know what that's gonna do, but I hopefully it's something. I hope they won't be bitter or anything. But I disagree with a lot of the stuff that they said, and I think this is important for us as a church because, again, I love the PCA and I want the PCA to do well. Is the PCA perfect? No, but I don't see why that's like a focal point, that the PCA isn't perfect. I think that's what people always go, PCA is not perfect, but it's good. It's like, no, I just want to say the PCA is good, right? Nothing is perfect. I don't know why I have to say it's perfect or it's not perfect. I don't go, CGS isn't perfect, but I love this church. I don't say that. I just go, I love CGS. You know, I don't see the need to say, oh, my family's not perfect, but I love them. You just love your family. And so the PCA is a denomination that I truly do love and I respect, and I want them to do well. This call to prayer and lament disturbed my soul for a number of reasons. And I don't know if we'll have time to go through all of it, but like you said, there's 4 things that they wanted to express, and were laments, and this is their language. 4 laments that express both our grief and our longing for a more faithful, Christ-centered future. This is their grief and their longing for a more faithful and Christ-centered future. No one's going to deny that. We all want a more Christ-centered future, yeah? More faithful, obviously. And so here's the first one. They said, we lament the schismatic culture of the PCA. Here's an issue for me. What's schismatic culture? You have to name it. You have to say the culture that's schismatic. Here are the evidences of why it's schismatic. But instead, what we saw was there is a deepening culture of suspicion, gracelessness. Like that's all in well that you think that there is. But again, that's like saying, I think Sam is a racist.
Whoa.
Yeah, you're going to be like, what did I say? What did I do?
I didn't say nothing.
Right? And so there's nothing specific given here, which is a big problem for me. And here's what one of the lines, we're still in the first lament. Many of us have experienced or witnessed racial microaggressions. The language in itself is troublesome because they chose purposefully, I don't know who wrote it, but they purposely chose to use neo-Marxist language. And they don't care. They'll roll their eyes thinking, what's wrong with that? You're just some right-winger who hates, who says, you don't like wokeism. So it's like they're throwing it in your face on purpose. So microaggressions are exactly that. They are micro. They are tiny. And so should you be offended by microaggressions, or should you say, these are things that are out there, but perhaps I can show grace, and maybe I can extend a hand in helping people understand that maybe this isn't the right thing to do. So here's an example of what I think a microaggression, or what I think they think a microaggression might be. So I went golfing with a friend of mine, and we're both Korean. And we went golfing with someone who was like in his 70s, really old. And he immediately asked if we were Korean. So, yeah, we're Korean. And he's like, and then he would try to speak Korean to us.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, he would be like, 안녕하세요, and then he would say all these things about Korea. My friend, who is more sensitive to that stuff, didn't appreciate that. Me, I could care less if someone says 안녕하세요 to me in an English, accent. In fact, I'm saying that right now in an English accent because I don't know how to speak Korean without an English accent, okay? But I don't care. He could say 안녕하세요 50,000 times. Every time he putts, he could have said 안녕하세요 and putted. I wouldn't have cared. I don't care about stuff like that, right? It would have been kind of funny to me. But my friend had to say something to him. We're Korean, but we're actually born here. We're Korean American. He said, oh, I'm so sorry. He apologized for saying 안녕하세요 to us. He apologized. And then he told us he actually fought in the Korean War. So he's a Korean War veteran. So he knows something of Korean culture, and he was trying to connect with us. But we were so busy with our microaggressions that we couldn't connect with the guy. And so we couldn't, for like 17 holes until he told us that, he was a Korean War vet, we couldn't connect with the guy because we're so upset at this microaggression, right? Microaggressions are things, if you're a Christian, you got to get over it. I'm so sorry to have to say this to you. Microaggressions will always exist. You will never get rid of it. I am so sorry to break this news to you. You will never get rid of it. In fact, the best thing that you could do is say, this is a microaggression. Why am I being so offended by it? It's a microaggression. Everybody has microaggressions that they do to each other. Everybody. I remember I had a white friend that I grew up with, and I told him he smelled like cheese. And he took it as offense because he had BO and it made him smell like Parmesan cheese, and I couldn't take it because I had a sensitive nose. That's an aggression. He took it like an aggression. Guess what? We were still friends, and I still said he smelled like Parmesan cheese. Like, these are things that you just grow up with. And now we live in a society that's so sensitive. We live together. We'll have microaggressions or medium aggressions or whatever you want to call it with each other. The point is we need to extend grace, forgiveness, hospitality, generosity to the other person. If we had done it earlier to this, gentleman, we would have been friends way faster. Instead, we were microaggressing him back with the whole white thing. I wasn't, but and so what is that? What is going on here? So when you use language like that, it really detracts from what you're trying to do, because is a microaggression something that we should truly lament, go into deep grievances over, or is it something that is a part of life that we should be like, oh, I need to learn to forgive and be okay? We've come such a long way from where people are actually trying to be sensitive to ethnic and racial minorities. If you believe in that stuff, man, if Daryl Harrison was here, he would go wild. He would go crazy saying, there's no such thing as race. That's the construct. We're all humans. There are differences in culture. Are you making fun of me for my culture? What are you doing, right? And so he will go off on us for even saying or acknowledging that there are some things like racial microaggressions, right? But I'm trying to be lenient here, and I'm trying to extend the grace that I want the people of this group to also extend. There's more here. There's more in this first lament, but I really went long on the microaggressions so that you can move on if you'd like.
I think, yeah.
All right. Here, number 2, it says, we lament that minority and female leaders remain sidelined. I'm not sure exactly what they're getting at. I think most recently there was some controversy over deaconesses or shepherdesses. And so the fact that people came out and spoke out against deaconesses and shepherdesses, shepherdess is just another word for elder, is it not? A female elder? But I think they were making a commentary on that. Minority. So here, we desire a spiritual family where women are empowered, minority voices are centered and celebrated rather than tolerated, and leadership reflects the global and multicultural body of Christ. So this is where I see the only way that this can move forward is if we have racial quotas and gender quotas. That is not biblical. That's a crazy statement to me. That as this thing goes on, it gets crazier. We're only on number 2. To have racial quotas is insane for me, because if you look at the Bible, there are no racial quotas. There's not even a quota for a master's degree. You know what the quotas are? You know what the guidelines are? It's clear in the Bible. Men are elders and deacons, and the way they are processed or they are affirmed is with moral quotas. Look at 1 Timothy chapter 3. It's a moral quota. You got to be this. You can't be given into this. You can't be this or that. Those are all moral quotas. But instead of going through that, now we're having racial quotas. That is a huge issue for me. It gets crazier. Sam, do you have anything or should we move on? Let's move on to number 3. Number 3 says, we lament that theological rigidity has supplanted confessional generosity. And I'm not sure, you might be like, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? And so this thing right here, saying that they are juxtaposed or they are contrasted with one another, they are saying that you can't have one and the other. You could only have one and not the other. You can't have theological faithfulness, or they could call it rigidity, and confessional generosity. You just can't have that. And Martin Lloyd-Jones was really strict on this because Martin Lloyd-Jones, and obviously this is many, many decades ago, he would go out on an interview, and you can find this interview still, just YouTube Martin Lloyd-Jones interview. And he says all this continually because the interviewer asks him, what do you think about tolerance? Shouldn't the church be tolerant? And he would respond, the church obviously is not going to be seen as tolerant by the world because we are saying Christ is the only way. He is the only way, the truth, and life. No one else could go to the Father except through him. Now, Martin Lloyd didn't say that last part. I'm saying it because the Bible is saying that. So if you are saying that generosity means we go away from confessional purity, I could call it rigidity, I would say that that is a false dichotomy that you have put out. I completely disagree with that. You could have charitable room for secondary disagreement on secondary matters. That's great. However, secondary matters are still important. That's why they're secondary. So there should be fierce debate on that stuff. And that's why we want doctrinal purity within any denomination and especially in the church. And so one of the things that I'm seeing is this kind of shift toward I don't want doctrinal purity or theological rigidity because that shouldn't be what's priority. What's priority should be, I'm going to call it confessional generosity, but what it really means is I want a big umbrella to accept all these other views.
So the accusation, well, not the accusation, but I guess the lament I think that they have in this section is that secondary matters has fractured fellowship. And so they're saying, why can't we just, have a little bit more flexibility so that it doesn't fracture fellowship? And so I agree with what you're saying. Where is the flexibility? Like, can we have any flexibility? Is a little flexibility? Like, where do we say this is too much versus too little? Like,
and this is not on you, but this is on the clarity of what they put in. That's the point. Where?
Yeah.
What is secondary to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you talking about? There's nothing specific here. You can't just bring out broad generalities and expect people to be like, yeah, secondary. Because what's secondary to you and secondary to me, we might not be in line. We were like, yeah, secondary. And what secondary could be exactly that, complementarianism. So can you be egalitarianism and still hold on in the PCA this place where we could quote unquote, this is what they're quoting, putting quotes over, faithful to the scriptures. They put that in the quotes, so weird. But they put that in quotes, remain faithful to the scriptures. It's like they're mocking people who say we want to be faithful to the scriptures. You guys, if you're not looking at this with us, please do. Number 3, the lament. The last line says, one where we can remain, quote unquote, faithful to the scriptures. Why are they putting quotes around that? There's no need to put quotes around that. We want to be faithful to the scriptures. Do I have to yell this from the mountaintops? We want to be faithful. There's no need for quotes there, bro. Who wrote this? And so, look, I didn't want to get worked up. And the videos that I saw were very tempered, very good. I'm not part of the PCA yet. So maybe I could get worked up for the people in the PCA. Because if you look at this is insane writing. I don't know what else to say. I'm so sorry that you think that we are fighting over secondary issues. Do you think complementarianism is a secondary issue. If so, you might agree, like all these people might agree, but that is cause for you to leave the denomination, because this denomination, its doctrinal rigidity or theological rigidity or whatever, the doctrinal positions that they have taken is that they are complementarian. So this is where, like, we are leaving the Reformed faith not in like small steps anymore. And this is my lament. I lament over the lament, and I wonder if they would extend the same grace that they're asking for to me if I were part of the PCA. Minority voices, where this is number 2, look at that last line. Minority voices are centered and celebrated rather than tolerated. If I were to go in the midst of these ethnic minority pastors, would I be centered and celebrated for my views? Would I be tolerated? Would I even be tolerated? I am, color me skeptical, but I don't think I would be. Let's go to that final one, unless you have something, brother.
No.
All right, the final one is, I believe, the most wild one. We lament that the denominational burden has become an obstacle to mission. Now, this is the most left-wing statement that I've heard so far. And here it is. The very neighbors, this is part of their thing, the very neighbors that we are seeking to love, secular, progressive non-Christians, LGBTQ individuals, immigrants, people of color, and more, are publicly belittled and demonized, if not by our words, then by our legislative actions. That to me was the most wild statement in the lament, or in this, statement that they wrote. And I am trying to be gracious as much as I can. I do believe that the people writing this still believe that a sin is a sin. However, I think what they're saying, and I'm trying to give them the biggest benefit of the doubt here, is we don't need to say that a sin is a sin because we will marginalize these people. We don't need to reaffirm sexual mores and values or roles because the Bible already says it, and it will marginalize those that are interested in the church if we continue to tell them about their lifestyles being bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Am I doing that?
I think someone might come back and say, well, that's not what we mean.
What would they mean then?
Just by publicly belittling or demonizing. We're not saying a sin is not a sin, but...
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we don't need to say that.
Oh.
We don't need to say that, because if we say that, we are then belittling and demonizing. If we say that illegal... I don't know why they wrote immigrants. My parents are immigrants. With like what? No one's demonizing them. But I think what they mean by immigrants are illegal immigrants. And so it is political. It is in a large way them adopting some of the values that left-wing propagandists have adopted, which is unfortunate to me. I don't know what else to say. I think by saying, that's my whole point. By saying clearly and outwardly, publicly, that this sin is a sin, we are closing the door to mission. I think that's what they're saying. Mission should be a priority. So mission should be a priority. We shouldn't be like knocking on LGBTQ individuals, keep on telling them they're a sin because, for instance, like one previous PCA pastor said, Jesus talks about greed way more than he does about, homosexuality or sexual sin. And so why are we talking about sexual sin so much? We should be talking about greed. And, in that way we could be more missional because everybody suffers from greed. Now, when we say one sin is worse than the other, what happens is we marginalize a group so they don't become, someone that can't accept the gospel. Now, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to shine a light as graciously as possible. I'm not sure if I'm doing it well. Hopefully I am. And so, this is some of the things where if you keep on saying LGBTQ is a sin, you are now distracting from the gospel. Because the gospel is Jesus saves sinners. And guess what? Everybody's a sinner. I think that's me trying to be as gracious as possible, yeah? And so, I don't know, unless you have something to say, Sam. This is probably the most wild statement that was written in this lament or this confession. And so, one of the things that I've also seen... Now let me get a little bit more serious. If you didn't think I was serious now, I'll get a little... I think this was a very ungracious statement, and I'm so sorry that so many people liked it, and people that we know liked it. One of the most ungracious things I've ever seen from the PCA, to be honest. I saw this one video saying, it was nice of them to say in the beginning and in the end. So in the beginning, it says, we are profoundly thankful for the ways God has used this denomination. And at the very end, it says, we are deeply grateful for the ways that the Lord has used the PCA. So they sandwiched the whole lament with
positive things.
Yeah, gratitude and thanksgiving. For me, it was an afterthought. And this is me being honest. Because so this is how sandwiches or burgers work in the New Testament. If they thought they were writing like Paul. The way burgers work is the center is highlighted and the sandwich, the breads, the buns, they help it get highlighted. There is nothing in between that shows that they're grateful for the PCA. In fact, it's all grievances. It's all them being upset. They never highlight one good thing that the PCA, the PCA did repent. And they even did this whole vote thing where they're saying like, when we supported, racial oppression, that was wrong. They did all that. Nothing is highlighted there. Nowhere inside this document or this confession do you see, the PCA already has gone through all these steps to try to be gracious and repent for their previous racial discrimination that they participated in. They did. But nowhere inside do you see that. It's all grievances. So in my opinion, as someone who's read this document again and again, those two things, and I saw this one video again of this PCA elder, teaching elder that was very gracious to them, saying he was at least thankful for that. For me, that makes me think that you're a super fugazi. I don't know what else to think. Maybe it's the New Yorker in me, but that's the most fugazi comment that you could put in a statement. If you are going to use the biblical model of the sandwich, that means these two things will support the middle, so the middle shines. Nowhere do we see any of those ideas of gratitude woven into their laments. It was all grievances. All I see is bitterness. And I hope that the PCA takes these and the signatories seriously, because this will not go well, in my opinion. And maybe I'm taking more one of the extreme positions of what people have been saying, but this is a very sad, sad thing that I saw, where all these Asian and other ethnic minority elders and members of the PCA are signing into this. And I will respectfully disagree. And I hope that if they were to extend the same grace to me as they want extended to them, then center my voice and my concerns from your laments.
Thank you for that, Pastor Gene. I think it's a good reminder for us to continue to pray for the PCA, for the Church of Christ. We continue to pray that we would be faithful to the Word, and that this would be resolved quickly and well.
In an edifying way.
In an edifying way. And we thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. We pray and hope, and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight, finish the race, keep the faith. Peace.